I had to re-record this video because a couple of things happened. One is the idiot from next door came banging on the bloody office door wanting to borrow a black tie. Like I have a black tie. In fact, I don't even have a tie, period. In fact, I don't even have a shirt that needs a tie. Anyhow, stop rambling, John. Get on with it. Okay, I've been working on this lovely little board that Ralph Bacon sent. If you don't know of him and you're interested in Arduino and interested in learning, go look him up on YouTube. It's Ralph Bacon. He has some many excellent educational videos. Nice personality. Unfortunately, he's going through eye problems at the moment, but I'm sure that will be resolved soon. So anyhow, he sent me one of these boards, and of course it was just a bare PCB. And you may have seen in a couple of other videos where I eventually bought the where's my pinky gone? There it is. Where I eventually bought the 328 PB Atmel chip that sits in this well, I guess it is a relatively old Uno clone which had a big dual-in line Atmel 328P, but he made it for that board. Putting a PB in here means you get an extra serial port and a couple of GPIOs, extra ports. But what I do, or what I did, and I think it's pretty much the same as Ralph, I use this to program bootloaders. And a big label on the bottom says bootloader. Well, that's because that's the sketch that's loaded on this Uno clone R3. Yeah, it's just, what can you tell? It's just a Uno clone. But I also have this DIY More AVR ISP shield. And as Ralph has said, they're so damn cheap, you might as well just buy it. What was his expression? As cheap as a cup of coffee. My coffee's a damn sight cheaper than this board. Still. It has just, obviously it's a shield, so it just plugs on top of the Uno. But it also has a 6-pin ISP header, a 10-pin ISP header, and a programming port over here, which is generally used for one of these USB to ISP type programming boards. And of course, obviously, it has a ZIF. If you don't know what a ZIF is, it stands for Zero Insertion Force. And if I can keep my fingers out of the lens and actually move this to my other hand, you can see as I close it, the little jaws inside squeeze the pins together. So when they're open, there is zero insertion force. What an amazing name to pick. Must have taken them months to figure that one out. Anyhow, I use this to program Ralph's board with a bootloader. It did take me a while to figure it out. In fact, it would have taken forever had I not sent email to Ralph and said, "Duh, what am I doing wrong here?" And he emailed me back saying, well, make sure you got this board selected and that thing and that thing and that thing and so on. So when you program this Uno underneath with the ISP, what do they call it? Arduino ISP, I think it's called, actually, as an example. It's just a regular Uno. So you're just programming a sketch onto an Uno, just like anything else. Once it's programmed, you have to tell the Arduino IDE that it's now something somewhat different, because you're actually trying to program the chip in here. So you have to go to Microcore's library of boards and pick the 328P and the variant PB. And here's the settings up here, look. You can see it, I hope, if I don't shake a bit too much, but it's 80 mega 328, 16 megahertz, disabled, 328PB variation or variant, and so on and so forth. And that bottom one should be, when you're programming the bootloader, set to what is it now? Arduino as. It should be set to Arduino as ISP. That top one there. Right? Only once you've programmed the bootloader can you go back to saying it's this one, the standard AVR ISP. So that's what I did, and it programmed well. Everything was fine, except for it came up with a bunch of error messages after I'd programmed the bootloader. Well, I thought that's not good. So I went through a number of tests and checks, and I checked all my surface mount soldering under my little handy dandy microscope, and well, it all seemed to be fine. So I eventually changed the Uno clone underneath. Now, I don't know if that actually achieved anything or not, but I thought, well, you know, let's change that and see if it makes any difference. Well, I still got errors programming the bootloader. It still said, you know, byte mismatch or something along those lines. So I thought, well, you know, to hell with error messages, let's just try it. So I dragged out my old dual inline Uno, pulled out the 328P chip, stuck in Ralph's board, and it worked like a champ. So just ignore error messages. If anybody knows the old story about Fred the Wheel Tapper, this is a similar case. If you don't know it, I'm sure if you Google it, you'll find it. So now I have to remind myself what board this is when I come to programming anything on it. It actually has to be marked not as an Uno anymore, but as a Minicore 328P version PB, so that I get all the PB bells and whistles. And next step is I'm going to take Ralph's code that he was using 2 serial ports and some other stuff. Obviously, well, not obviously, but you can see I've loaded the Blink program, and I know I loaded it because it was a different rate, different frequency prior. So it took that fine. No reason why it shouldn't take everything else fine. So we'll just, well, maybe I'll do that tomorrow. Not quite sure. Bye.